Yeah. I'll sit over here so I can look over this guy's shoulder. Should I ask the questions my husband asked? God sakes, David. He said it's true.
It's on.
All right, question.
Good afternoon, everyone, or evening, and welcome to the August the 7th, 2018 meeting of Mayor and Council. I'll call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock p.m. Our city manager will be joining us here in just a few minutes, but before that, we're going to have our invocation by Council Member Leslie McPherson, followed by a Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Lord, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for the people who have taken their time to attend. Give us wisdom that we would do right by the city and the people that live in it. Thank you for all our employees that work hard to try to make everything run on a daily basis. Lord, just help us be honest, ethical. We thank you for the rain you've sent, and we thank you for the sunshine. And just bless your name. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we have a few presentations we'd like to make tonight. The first one is for Jameson Green, and Jameson is not able to be with us tonight. His son, I believe, has a football game to practice. So Jameson works in our stormwater maintenance department and does a really good job for us. Has been here 10 years. So Jameson, when you watch this, we thank you for all your hard work, and we hope we have many more years to work with you. And our second one is I'm going to get this person to meet me down in front. And but while I'm on the microphone, I know she's got some family here, but most of you know that I worked in the recreation department for some 14 years. And this lady that I'm going to recognize now was there 16 years before I started. She'd been here with the city 30 years. I think she started as a bus driver, part-time, and she's now the director of our senior services division of the Parks and Recreation Department. So, Ernestine, if you will join me down front, please.
Jeff, I'm scared.
There's a story there. I got to tell you two stories. Now, she'll let me do this. All right. I got to tell you two funny stories about Ernestine. Look, all my folks back there know what I'm about to say. I learned one thing about Ernestine really quick. If you're going to hug Ernestine, don't approach her from the front. She does not like hugging from the front. She will knock you down. Knock you down. The second thing is, she don't like frogs. So guess what I got? We had, as you can tell, Ernestine and I are very close. We plowed a lot of fields together in the recreation department. And I've seen a lot of folks come and go, and figuratively and literally in the senior services department. We have clients that pass on. So we shared those tears together. I guess some of the most tears we had was on September 11, 2001, when we all gathered around TV and watched the Twin Towers. And so she's more than a worker to me. She's my sister, but more than that, she's a friend. And I just want to thank you on 30 years of service to the city, and thank you for being my friend all that time.
I'm glad we're close.
Carol. See y'all.
It's always a pleasure for me to recognize our employees, but since they're the first line that most of our citizens come in contact with, and I'm very proud of our workforce here and think they do a tremendous job. The next item that's on the agenda is the Norfolk Southern grant acceptance, and I'm going to ask that be tabled until the next meeting. I spoke to our representative from Norfolk Southern, and the check's still in the mail. It just hadn't been delivered to him. So when our representative gets that, he will be here hopefully at the next meeting to present that. And for those of you that may not be aware, Norfolk Southern gave the city a $5,000 grant for our police department, which will enable us to outfit, 2 officers, I believe, with body cameras. So that's, how many was that?
2 cars and body camera.
Gotcha. So we'll thank them appropriately when they get here. So, yeah, I would ask that we table that. Now, this is ceremonial presentation, so we haven't adopted agenda yet. So, I'm going to ask Chief Mansour if he would come up now. We have a little surprise twist. I hope you knew about it.
That line of work, you probably didn't know too much this surprise.
Tommy King. Corporal King responded to a call on August the 6th at 10:36 a.m. Carroll County 911 received a call from, also Chiquita, she did too. Received a call from 335 North Avenue. The caller was a 10-year-old named Hunter Bartle. Hunter told 911 dispatcher that his mother was having a seizure and she needed help. The dispatcher was asking Hunter several questions about his mother and also the description of his house. Hunter answered all the questions the 911 dispatcher was asking. Due to Hunter calling 911 and staying calm, his mother, Mary Carey, is here today. Mary was transported to Tanner Medical and received medical attention she needed. And we feel like Hunter should be recognized for this. And so we're going to call Hunter up and we're going to give him an award here and congratulate him. So come on up. The Police Department Certificate of Excellence presented to Hunter in recognition of his heroic life-saving actions when calling 911, remaining calm under pressure, and providing necessary information to the operator. Good job, guys. And we also have a package that was prepared from Carroll County 911 and the Villarica Police Department. It's got all kind of cool goodies in there for you. So I want you to enjoy those. We're going to get your picture. Come on back up here. Come on back up. Officers are going to be in the picture with us too. All right?
Nice to have stories like that.
Where are you going, Chief? You got one more?
He was at my door the other day. Had a
While the chief's coming back in, Carroll County Commission Chairman Marty Smith is on the agenda next, and I know there are a couple of people here from Chairman Smith's office to present something on our T-Splost as the train goes by. Chairman Smith is on I-20 headed this way. He is behind a wreck, unfortunately, so I'm going to ask if the council will let that be moved down, and then when I see Chairman Smith come in, then if we can just stop at that point and let him present, I would appreciate that. Okay, hearing none, please proceed.
All right, my next presentation is a certificate for Carolyn Clark. Carolyn is retiring next month. She has, I think she was counting it the other day, it's right at 35 to 40 days. I picked in the lottery about 18. I don't think she'll make it that far, and she knows that. But she's been with us 7.5 years. She's been our administrative assistant. She came to us from Atlanta, Georgia. She worked there for 30 years, and we're just proud for her that she's going to get to retire. So we have a certificate with her. We also have our annual report that is part of Carolyn's job to create. And this year, she did most of the work, and then she came to me and said, I don't have anybody dedicated to it. And I said, well, just let me have it. I'll figure out somebody. And so, first of all, with the certificate, I asked her if she'd do the certificate because she usually doesn't. She wouldn't do that. I tried. But we did dedicate the Billerica Police Department annual report to her. And the picture on it, see? Yeah, we got her glamour shot. It looks like, I think, where she went on a cruise. But we appreciate all you've done for our department, and we'd like you to come up and get your certificate. This is the thing that she hates every year having to do. So that was the fun part about dedicating it to her.
Well, thank you. I have to say, I was really surprised. I finished the annual report. I gave it to him and said, I don't have a dedication. And then I told somebody recently, I was like, I don't know what happened to it. It just disappeared when I gave it to him. And I had no idea that
Thank you, Chief. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you have a copy of the agenda before you, and I would entertain a motion to adopt or amend as presented.
All right, I'll make a motion.
Get this thing going. Make a motion to move the ceremonial recognition item for North Fork Southern's to the September meeting. That's been be tabling for a month. And also to float the Marty Smith presentation for T-Splosh until he arrives.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second, any discussion? If not, all in favor? Unanimous. Okay, we have reached the public comment portion of our meeting. Anyone wishing to give public comment, please do so at this time. State your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Rhonda McCullers, 401 North Lost Lake Cove, Billerica. I am here tonight on behalf of the Main Street Advisory Board. We have a question, I'm guessing, for Mr. Mecklin. Not real sure, but we decided this year as a board that we would have our own beauty pageant as a sort of a fundraiser moneymaker for Main Street. And in doing so, we had people previously who we let hold pageants at the festival. And they called them Gold Rush pageants. But we let her know kindly that we were going to do our own this year, and so she wouldn't be able to host hers at our festival. We have since learned that we may have stepped on some toes with the name, and I am just concerned about what our legal standing could be as far as saying, no, you can't use our name in conjunction with our festival, or, and also there's a conflict of interest in the parade. If we have a Miss Gold Rush and she has a Miss Gold Rush, then do we have the right to say, no, you can't use this name, you can't have them in the parade? We're not sure what our legal standing is, or if we have a patent on that name, or, you know, can we say it's our event, go away? We're not really sure, and we have a board meeting coming up. However, our pageant is August the 24th. I know there's already some information going out on the other Gold Rush pageant as well. And it says it's in Villa-Rica and that the winner can ride in the Gold Rush Parade.
Probably the quick answer to your question is going to be it depends. And I think we need to sit down and talk about what all the facts of it are so that we can give you a good legal opinion about what the situation is. So if you will get me, how to contact you, I'll sit down and talk with you and we'll figure out an answer to that question.
Absolutely. That would be
Thanks.
great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else?
Wesley Wagner, 635 South Street, Villa-Rica. Here, about 6 months ago, I came to y'all about tiny homes. I'm trying to change the size of the requirements for the tiny homes. I have here information that the state requirements for a tiny home is 400 square feet, and my tiny home falls within that the state requirements. I ask that y'all change the requirement on the tiny homes from what y'all's requirements say, no more than a 10 by 12 structure, which is less than 200 square feet, to 400 square feet. That's all I'm asking, to where I can finish my the plumbing and everything else in my tiny home. That's why I'm asking.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tom Barber will be responding to you on that issue. He'll get back with you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, we will move along. Council updates. I have one that I would like to read aloud here. Chief, this seems to be your night. So, received a letter from Flowers Bakers. It's a letter of appreciation for training officer Perry Baxter. On behalf of Flowers Baking Company of Villa-Rica LLC, please allow me to express our appreciation and thanks to the Villa-Rica Police Department training officer Perry Baxter for his presentation on active shooter training during the month of July 2018. This was a great opportunity for all Flowers Baker Company team members to learn the critical aspects of emergency response in the event of an active shooter on our premises. Officer Baxter's presentation tied in real-world active shooter events, which further allowed our team members to grasp the importance of being proactive in their presentation to handle the threat of an aggressive active shooter. Officer Baxter's classes were presented in the utmost and professional manner, which was greatly appreciated by our entire team. Once again, we thank you and Training Officer Perry Baxter for your support and for our active trainer shooting. Respectively, Don North, Environmental Manager and Director of Operations for Flowers Bakers. So, thank you, Chief. Anybody else? Okay, moving right along. We will move to the consent agenda, and for those in attendance, the consent agenda is a single item that encompasses all things the City Council would normally approve with little comment. Each of these items were discussed at the past Thursday council work session, and it was a unanimous consensus of the governing body to place the following items on the consent agenda. Item number 1, request for temporary signage for the 2018 Frontiers Rodeo. Item number 2, Senior Services Contract Renewal. This is with Three Rivers Regional Commission. Item number 3, Military Surplus. Item number 4, Emergency Replacement of Gear Reducer. Item number 5, Budget Amendments for 2017. Item number 6, Budget Amendments for 2018.
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and multiple seconds to approve the consent agenda. All in favor? Okay, it is unanimous. Tab A, Parks and Recreation. Vicki?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The item that's before you, this is the final presentation for the Master Trail Plan that the department has been working on. Let me make sure that we're good to go. Just really quickly, as we work to develop this plan, we had the department worked with the steering committee as well as through a series of public meetings, and this is just an opportunity to I'll try to, as quickly as possible, move through this to give you an understanding of how we arrived to the recommendations. The first thing, as far as putting the presentation together and us really looking at how the plan was developed, we had to really look at some of the constraints. The constraints within the city, of course, most of them are the state roads. Of course, we have the railroad that was intersecting the city, as well as I-20, which kind of provided some challenges as far as navigating across the city. What you have before you is essentially the overall alignment of what, working with the consultant, we were able to develop. What you're looking at here is, approximately 22 miles. Just so that everyone has an understanding, the dashed lines represent those areas that we were able to work through and develop through the public meetings, as well as the solid lines there, which is an existing layout of a trail system or network within the Mirror Lake community. So again, this is just part of what we were able to develop, and as well as an existing network that really isn't quite up to the same standard of what is ultimately going to be proposed, but altogether it represents the plan. Make sure. The plan itself was divided up into multiple segments, just so that everyone understands the segments as we talk about them don't necessarily represent any sequential order of development, but just really more illustrative purposes as I move through this discussion. The first segment that we're going to look at represents really the desire to create a pedestrian or trail system that allows people to move and navigate towards downtown in this first segment. One of the areas on North Dogwood, if you go back and look, we had this discussion about how we could really connect both sides of the what is proposed for the trail. And this particular area looks to be really probably the best place that we were able to find that could provide pedestrian connectivity. I'm going to really quickly just give you an example. This is a rendering that looks at how we could propose a pedestrian underpass under the existing rail. I know there's been some discussions and opportunities to examine it. Providing that connectivity in other areas. This really, when you look at the alignment of the existing road, not road, but of where this unpaved road was, this is the opportunity that really, I guess, best suited being able to meet the standards to cross in this area. Bear with me. Okay. Really quickly, some of the things that we looked at were some of the important destinations that we wanted to connect within the city. The schools were certainly part of those important destinations, and so here's what is just a representation of how we could go and enhance some of the striping to, number one, allow people to know that this is part of our system. So there's an opportunity, of course, to connect the elementary school in this area. The next segment looked at how can we connect our downtown going back over towards Mirror Lake. There had been certainly some discussion over the years about, a future connection there. This proposes connecting downtown by way of the Mill Amphitheater. And again, as I mentioned, some important destinations, some of our parks were, things that we wanted to make sure that we were connecting as well. So from downtown, connecting by way of the park, and then the residential community over in the Mirror Lake area was, again, one of the ways that we thought that we could accomplish this, especially as it's been a part of the conversation over time within the community. Here's Carroll Road. Again, looking at finding ways to connect both sides of the railroad really quickly. What we realized is just kind of going in and enhancing some of the landscaping and really providing a much more well-defined pedestrian path across. That's Highway 78 moving back towards the mill, and certainly enhancing all of the striping in that area. So it really provides a better guide for pedestrians that are moving throughout the city. As I mentioned back, specifically Cleghorn, here's a rendering that really looks at how we could go in and enhance some of the landscaping along the path. But this is just one example of what it could look like within the city. Looking at connecting from Cleghorn, moving back over to Old Stone Road. As we look at providing the connectivity back over to Old Stone, again, being able to make sure that we can take advantage of some of the scenic areas that may be along any kind of creek or environmental areas, that just provides a change of scenery, happens to soften it. I think it's one of the things that we looked at really promoting in terms of addressing connectivity and movement around the city. This next segment, and I'll go into just a little bit more detail, but from Old Stone, looking to provide connectivity all the way over to Fullerville. One of the important destinations, in addition to park, but any of the community facilities such as the library as well as Tanner Hospital provides a great opportunity. Specifically, we'll go in a little bit more detail, but this is one of the areas that we'll focus on in terms of making a recommendation on what could be a model project for the city. But from the library, one of the first things, if you guys will recall, we did last year was construction of our trailhead project. And so really from this particular area of the city, providing that connectivity back over to Fullerville Park, which is where the trailhead exists, is one of the important things that we'll look at in terms of creating this system. But as I mentioned, here's the library, and one of the conceptual renderings is basically using the library as a trailhead. It provides the opportunity, as we seek to promote active living within the city, it creates an opportunity for us to even look at partnering with Tanner Hospital with the extension of their walking system. And so, again, this is a recommendation that we're looking at as far as one of the model projects for the city. It just allows us to gain a little bit of synergy with a neighboring partner, if you will, that is really seeking to promote active, healthy living as well. As we look at being able to connect from the library and the hospital over to Fullerville, one of the things that we really have to be able to examine, of course, is, providing that a safe means by which to cross over the state, Dallas Highway, basically, which is a state road. So what essentially is being proposed is a signal, if you will. And again, this is going to be something that requires conversation with Georgia Department of Transportation, but anyone who's been on Dallas Highway knows that at certain times of the day, it certainly presents a challenge with respect to, coming out of driveways, even if you're a car. So making sure that we provide a safe place for pedestrians to cross from one side of the street to eventually move over towards Fullerville, I think is going to be important. Once connected at the Fullerville Park and the trailhead, here's another opportunity where we can connect back over to Main Street, which is the next segment 5. We have a line that is maybe not the most active line in the city, but certainly there is some activity a couple of times a year. So in terms of being able to we're not necessarily in the position to maybe request the abandonment of this particular rail spur, but what we can do is certainly take advantage of a portion that's just outside of it, and we can provide some screening. And again, the opportunity just to connect over from Fullerville coming back towards downtown. Segment 6, really quickly, looks at, again, another desired destination of adding the parks into this system. And this is where we're looking to connect from the other Fullerville and the other spur that we just talked about over to Goldust Park, where there are some existing trails within the city. So that's one means by which to do it. If you will recall, there was quite a bit of conversation as we worked through the trailhead construction last year. Going back to the Fullerville trailhead, there is an opportunity that we sought to take advantage of last year, and that was with the proposed North Loop bypass. What we wanted to do was make sure that we were going to provide the connectivity across the bypass. And so with that, we brought before you an opportunity, some opportunities to look at how we would provide that connectivity, and the discussion was to do a pedestrian underpass. And this is an example of where you would be looking at connecting from the Fullerville trailhead by way of the underpass, which would go under North Loop bypass, and then connect the residential that's on the north side of the proposed road. Which I think is probably one of the best ways to look at, again, where there is residential and how we could really maximize the use safely across that road. Segment 8, as I mentioned, there is within the Mirror Lake community an existing path that is not up to the exact same standard of what we're proposing, but it certainly addresses or creates the opportunity for us to add this component within our plan. So really quickly, with the new park that has been proposed that we worked on master planning, we can easily provide the connectivity extending from where Connors Road and Mirror Lake Parkway is, but where existing residential exists right now and where it will continue to come in. So there are also even opportunities that can come out of the back way to connect you over to Mirror Lake, somewhat near, that's kind of where the dam comes in. We have talked about, again, some of the challenges with connecting the northern side of the city because it's split by I-20. And so here's where we found the best way to do it. Connecting over off of Connors Road near Mirror Lake Elementary and coming down Tyson Road. There we have an opportunity to, there's a utility easement. And I'll just go through some of the really quick. That allows us to connect Spring Lake, which is a park that is planned, and to come fully across to the western side where After segment 10, I think it should go. Here's just a picture of where the utility easement comes in. And here is the other south connector coming down Daniel Road from South Carroll, where it will come back and tie in. Again, what it's doing is taking advantage of connecting in this particular area a lot of the residential within the city before the loop closes and then proceeds to come across Highway 61. Daniel Road, and then this is just another rendering, which of course shows where there's opportunity to enhance the striping. Finally, this with this segment, it is the final connection down to the V-Plex. This is where, again, you have an opportunity to really connect by way of some of the softer paths, if you will, just to put you closer to creeks and connect the residential that we know at some particular point in time will come and fill in. And so this just kind of really summarizes the overall path that we were able to come up with working with the consultant. So I'm going to jump really quickly. We talked about implementation over the last year and how that will work. Certainly there are opportunities that, just similar with the original Fullerville Trailhead, we looked at opportunities of reaching out to grant funding from the Georgia Department of Transportation. There are other trail organizations, as well as matching dollars that may be required by the city. Additionally, part of the conversation is to also look at how this particular plan could be adopted into the comprehensive plan and ultimately be included as part as required improvements as it relates to development. Again, this just really quickly touches back on what the model project recommendation was, which was at the Villa Rica Public Library site, using that as the trailhead. Again, other recommendations for implementation is the creation of a friends group, which is always important if you're looking at fundraising opportunities and really being able to take advantage of those. Forming an implementation committee that can provide some recommendations on different segments that may move forward, and just prioritizing implementation as a whole. The consultant put together, based on their experience, they recommended 4 segments that they thought would be probably the best to begin with, which were those, just really quickly, that looked at connecting from Fullerville, for those who weren't able to see, the hospital, public library, and then back by way, coming back to downtown. This just based, again, on their experience, they put together some estimated implementation costs and what that looks like, and then essentially a 5-year implementation strategy or time frame. Part of one of the items that the steering committee was tasked with was to really begin the conversation of how can we begin branding it, and part of that was the creation of a logo and a name for the trail. They worked through several rounds, and after those several rounds, it was taken to the community for final comment, and here's what we have is the Gold Nugget Trail. You can see the nugget, certainly, and the name really, I guess, recognize the history of the city, that certainly gold mining was a part of it, and this was the name and logo that was probably the most well received out of those that were considered. To take it a little bit further, part of that branding as well really quickly includes such things as signage. It's really important that anyone who's using the trail understands that when they see these signs, they recognize that they are in fact on the trail. So everything from, your mileage markers, your regulatory, and your information signs. So those are just 4 different examples of what's recommended. Creating just some standard, other standard amenities. Again, people, of course, will definitely need seating. So from the benches, bike racks, and other trash receptacles as well. Just other standard details that look at some of the development standards that are used. This is just specifically examples of the design standards as it relates to the trail. Some of the pocket parks, everyone is going to need, if you're on the trail, an opportunity to just slow down and maybe take a breather for a moment. And so here are some of the examples that they are recommending for development standards as it relates to the pocket parks. They also have some standards for being able to develop and in terms of route bridging. So they're proposing really taking advantage of keeping as much of the canopy that's in place. So how can they build and not necessarily damage any of the existing root systems? I think is certainly an important to saving the trees that are out there. Recommendation on fencing materials as you move through the plan as well as I think pedestrian safety again is going to be important, and anytime you are on the trail and you have to cross the street, making sure that all of it is properly marked is important. So certainly making sure that they have the identifying markers of when, hey, you're leaving the trail and you may be crossing a street. So kind of the same thing. Here are some examples of, hey, there may be some streams that need to be crossed, but they're not trying to, or they're trying to certainly develop in a way that minimizes any impact or backing up the water. So here are some crossings that certainly have the overall durability to handle any vehicles that need to cross on it as well. And again, examples of underpasses. So what are the next steps? Certainly adoption of the plan, which is before you tonight. Establishing an implementation committee, identifying funding for the model project, which I know we've talked about, and certainly as staff we are working to put forward applications for funding opportunities as well. And the other part that we mentioned, if this is adopted tonight, some of the next steps of course will be looking at ordinances which could make this a required improvement, such that if you have developers or anything that are coming forward and proposing development, this becomes a required part. And yes, you can already answer the question, this is part of the long-term comprehensive plan that we've discussed. Again, prioritization, identified funding, and there may be some instances where there may be some additional parcels that may be acquired, but certainly we've looked at every opportunity to take advantage of existing right-of-way. There is the utility easement that we're going to have to work with the property owners the exact same way that the utility company would have gone out to acquire an easement. So that's part of what we'll have to work through as well. And finally, what we have is the appendix. Some of the questions that I've received is, there was something that certainly is part of our discussion with the community that was proposed for downtown. What we wanted to put in there for future considerations was all of the information that the consultant gathered. Should at some point in time the city want to look at making any modifications to the downtown. So this was them looking at some of the parking spaces. So that information is included as part of the appendix. should the city want to look at future considerations, exploring this at some later time. So, and that's it. Unfortunately, of course, the consultant could not be here tonight, but I would certainly say that the PATH Foundation, along with Kaizen Collaborative, they're available if there are any other questions, but I think they work very well with the city in terms of being responsive to questions that came up, and just working with staff, I would just say, as a whole. So with that said, I don't know if you guys have any additional questions beyond what we may have covered also on Thursday.
Only thing I was, well, it may not be the only thing I'm curious about, but that kind of struck me, and I can't find it right now, is the timetable and that sort of thing. It sounds really aggressive to me.
Yeah, let me see if I can.
It's got a 5-year implementation, and I know for the Greenbelt in Carrollton, I think theirs was even originally longer than that, and there was like a significant donor that helped really move that along. I'm just curious as to how they came up with that. I mean, they think that's realistic that we can raise that money, matching funds, and do that amount of time. That's pretty much it.
Well, again, this is a recommendation. You know, if there's something that you could accomplish in 5 years, I don't necessarily know that it's set in stone, but I think what is helpful, or what I take from it anyway, is it helps to have some estimated cost of construction. So it allows you to be able to better plan in terms of implementation. So when I look at this final number of 6.2, we can, you know, best gauge on, okay, if we were able to successfully find grants for this, a lot of times that is maybe a 20% match coming to the table as an example. So we will be able to know if that's something we could do on our end. Maybe it's not 5 for us, maybe it's 6, or maybe it is 7. But I think for me, my takeaway is the cost of construction helps us better plan on our end and be able to prioritize.
And we now have a relationship with the Community Foundation. Did I say their name correctly?
Yes.
Where contributions can be made and we can receive those there. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
So just some comments. I think we attended every meeting but one on the trail, and a lot of you in this room gave input, and we appreciate every bit of that. But what you are looking at, council, is a plan. And having done master plans on parks for most of my adult life, realize that you are not adopting a plan with money attached to it. This is a very fluid plan. It's not going to, the end result probably is not going to look exactly like what you're looking at tonight. There are going to be issues with easements, there are going to be changes in developments, but as Vicki said, one of the most important things is this is a step in the direction to build us a Gold Nugget Trail here in Villa Rica. And I can tell you, just since we started talking and having this conversation, I met with Tanner last week, and they were very receptive to being a partner on our Model Mile. And it fits well within Tanner's scope of what they do as far as a wellness community. So I would look for them to be an active partner on this trail system. Vicki mentioned grants, and that's certainly something we'll look at also. But I just, you know, the question has been asked of me, how can we be talking about spending $6 million on a trail when we have all the infrastructure problems? And we're not, that's not what this is. This is a master plan for development of a trail system in Villa Rica. I know of 2 plans that are sitting on somebody's shelf or in somebody's office right now on parks, one on Connors Road Park and one for Spring Lake that you mentioned, and neither one of those plans were ever funded, but the plan still exists. And the other important thing to remember is I know that since I've been involved in this trail planning process, we've had 2 developers that have come to the city and said we would like to develop parcels of land in the city. Just so happened both of those parcels actually butted up to where this trail system is. So I asked both of those developers if they would be receptive to building that portion of the trail that butts up against the back side of their properties, and in both cases they said they would. So again, this is going to be a very fluid plan, but it is a plan, and the journey of 1,000 miles begins one step forward, and that's exactly what this is, a step forward in the right direction, in my opinion. So, any other comments or questions?
Have we talked to Norfolk Southern about crossing the railroad in 2 different places?
We have not talked to the railroad yet. This is really, we're just at the point where, as a plan, that this is something that we can look at. One of the things that we talked about as we went through this process is that's something that would be a long and engaging conversation. And if anything, that probably would be one of the components that, if anything, was probably be one of the last things to implement because of the time of just engaging them and having that conversation as it relates to an underpass. But certainly the group that we've worked with shared a lot of their experience with, some of their approaches and their successes with engaging the railroad.
Any other questions or comments?
No, I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor, to approve the resolution adopting the Villa Rica Gold Nugget Trail Master Plan.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you, Vicki, for all your hard work, and the journey has begun. Okay, I noticed that Chairman Marty Smith has joined us, and Chairman Smith, we moved you to where we wanted you to be here, and I'm just going to say a couple of words about Chairman Smith. We are very blessed to have a chairman in Carroll County and in Douglas County that are very receptive to talking to us, and I'm proud of that. We have a great relationship with our chairmans, and that means a lot to you, the taxpayer, because duplication of government services is not a good thing. And if we can work together for the betterment of all of our citizens, and that's good. That's money well spent. So there's your introduction, and you didn't pay me for that, but thank you for our friendship and for working for Villa Rica as hard as you do. And I'm going to let you introduce your staff.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to be here, and we do apologize. I do for being late. We had guests in town, went out of town. The weather caught us. Bad accident out on I-20 eastbound. With the new gate GDOT just put up, we'll probably be hearing about it next year. They had some problems trying to get crossing and all that. So with no further ado, we will get going. I do have staff. Gerald Pilgrim is operations manager, has been with the county probably 7 years. Lehman Stevens is the finance. I will tell you, they could have done this whole presentation. They didn't need me. I appreciate the invitation and being a part of it. We appreciate the opportunity to get to Villa Rica. Our meetings being at the same time does not allow that, but in reciprocation fashion, I will say I try holding a quarterly mayor's meeting, and any staff, when Tom first came on board, Tom's been great to work with as well. A lot of times the day-to-day handles with the city manager versus the mayor, but the mayor is extremely involved. The mayor has attended, I think, every meeting we've had. Comes to Carroll, and we're going to start trying to host them in each of the other municipalities, but they've had great participation and work with us well, and we appreciate that. It's tough when we can't make the meetings and be there, but it's all about communication. We do have a good team here. They're probably going to be able to answer more of the questions mine. I'm going to walk through the meeting and appreciate the opportunity to do this in front of the council and any citizens here as well. With that, I will say we did not don the colors. I will tell the new mayor when I made that, when I came into office, a challenge to all municipalities, that if they'd get me a shirt that I could wear, that I would, when coming to council meetings, all that, wear theirs. Bowden's the only one that took me up on that. So I do know we are VR. I can quote it and say it, and I just need to don the colors up here. I figure Coach may have an old shirt or something I could wear.
You will have
to purchase it. So.
You will have a new shirt.
See, but I will say the former mayor did get a visor, but visors I was taught not to wear that in a building. So I'm looking for something to wear in the purple. But thank you again. I know it's been a long, even don't want to take up a lot of time, but I do want to take this because it is serious, and we want to make sure questions are answered because we are shooting for a November deadline to get it on the ballot. But with that said, we've got the single 10 T-spliced up there was one, what is a T-splice? It works just like the regular splice. I know y'all are very familiar with it. In 2012 and 13, when I was coming into office, it was a regional spliced. A lot of the board members that's been involved with what we have faced, when I first came in office in 2013, a regional spliced, it would have been designated among X amount of counties. As the collection of money, it is sent to some big city called Atlanta, and for every dollar we sent, we only got 75 cents back. Plus, we had to designate, typically a year in advance, any projects that we had, send them to Atlanta for approval. I don't like government standing in the way anyway, but I sure don't like bad government where we can't control it. They deregionalized the T-Spliced 2 years ago, so this is a county T-Spliced only. It works just like a spliced. It's a collection of a penny, and that's what we have chosen to do. It is a typical, one penny sales tax designated just for transportation, and that's something Carroll County as a whole has never had a major direction for, or a major plan. The funds will be used for major improvements, paving, resurfacing, bridges, signaling, and I know no one here would complain about striping of roads in Carroll County. It's probably other than speeding and trash, striping is probably my #1 call. And it's not because we're doing less. We've got about 1,100 miles in Carroll County of roads, of paved roads to upkeep. The problem is we've got more people. We have doubled in size since 1989. We've got about 120,000 plus people. So we got more cars and activity on the roads, so the striping's not lasting as long. This will allow us, for the first time in the history of Carroll County, to lay a plan down in the cities as well for infrastructure, to actually design. Carroll County has 177 subdivisions, and there is no plan in place to even pave them on a reoccurring basis and put them, even though we adopt to take them in. So I think for the first time, this will give us some direction to kind of give an infrastructure, because we, categorize, we prioritize. Other than public safety, which you'll hear a little about more in just a few minutes, our infrastructure of our roads have got to be taken care of. The improvements will help overall just make Carroll County a safer place. And with more people, we know that's a grand challenge. Right now, there's been a study, roughly 8 to 10% of the bridges in the state of Georgia, 8 to 10% of the bridges in the state of Georgia are failing. I don't think we can wait on the state to determine when we're going to fix our bridges. So it'll help us put that. Many of y'all may know Charles Pope. Charles was with the city of Carrollton for 30 years. Now he's been with Carroll County for 14. I know the mayor and council are very familiar with him. But he does a tremendous job reaching out to 7 municipalities and working with them and helping them on projects. He has never had a design. We have to implement with our LMIG money and trying to plan a year in advance. He does a good job, but he's never had a facilitation of money and funding that we just know other than his just general fund budget. So we feel like it's the first time of really laying true direction for the direction Carroll County wants to take. Why is the T-Spliced important? Well, like I said, with over 1,000 miles, it's our responsibility. It's for us to take care of. There's been no plan put in place. This will give us the first time for a plan. With the finance director, I'm not the numbers guy here, he says it'll allow roughly about a little over $16 million for new funding, and that's for the county and the cities to divide.
Bill Rica each year is about 1.2 million that we expect the city to receive.
$1.2 million for the city of Villa Rica alone out of that division. And who will pay for this? Well, one, when you start looking at new revenue, I came into office in 2013. For the first 3 years, we were overstating revenues. We took over a budget, and we were working off about a $2.5 million deficit. All we could do is cut spending and manage money. What I promised the citizens of Carroll County when I came into office, that I would not raise taxes until we had overturned every stone and looked at every variable. That's expenditures and matching them with revenues. And what we've done is I hired a consultant part-time to come in, and we actually worked with Coweta County because they had a guy that retired from administration after 31 years. I figured if he didn't know county government, no one did. So we've matched revenues and expenditures with another county's budget to see if we were leaving money on the table or where we might be missing opportunities to cut and fund better. What we found out is Carroll County, and actually our new finance director came in, he had not been here 2 months, and he said, Carroll County does not have a spending problem. You have a revenue problem. So we really did. We cut our budget. We really watched and managed spending. The operations manager, myself, we got down as far as any purchasing had to be signed off through my office. We wanted to manage that tight to make sure we were seeing, no fall for or over excessive spending. I actually had budget department heads when I came in the office. When we set the budget, we were on a fiscal year, and when we came in and started on July 1, they thought their line item had that much money in there. So we had a lot of training to do, a lot of upkeep to do, and a lot of personnel to teach and train to get on the same page we were. But I will say, when our audit comes up this year, I think Carroll County will probably be the healthiest Carroll County has ever been in the history of Carroll County, if his estimates are right. And we're going to see that here in the next 60 days. So I'm proud to present that as well. But everyone pays into a T-SPLOST. It's just like the E-SPLOST or the regular SPLOST. Everybody that buys and purchases in the county. When I tell you we did our job of matching expenditures and revenue, I also went to the employees. Our goal, when he was hired, he'll tell you, he's got it memorized, he was hired for two things. Cut wasteful spending and manage the money, and keep us money in the bank for 90 days to where we don't have to borrow, to keep our bond rating secure. Number two is find money back for our employees. The employees have been overlooked for a very, very long time. Those two things we're going to continue to manage, but I've asked the employees to give back. When I came in office, our health insurance alone was $6 million. In just 4.5 years, it went to $8 million. And the employees couldn't understand why we weren't giving a raise. It's gone up $2 million. Took us 2 years because we could not even afford to put in a wellness plan, but I knew a wellness plan from reading the journals and all was a quick fix to show that you're implementing something to the health insurance, because when they broker you every year to look at you as a whole. So I told the employees, it's not going to be popular with 650 employees, but we're putting in a wellness plan. We met with folks at Tanner Medical Center because at the time we could not even afford to put a plan in place. They actually wrote a grant. We applied for it. We actually were accepted because we were first applicants to where we put a wellness plan for 5 years in place. This is the first year that Carroll County in 17 years has come in with a flat revenue on the renewal of our insurance. So we feel like we've asked the employees to give back and be a part of this same big picture here. We've done everything internal. We've changed beer and wine licenses. We've changed fees for building structures. We've done everything internally we thought we could. We've asked employees to give back, and we were down to 2 choices now into my 6th year. That's on the backs of property owners. We typically, I think there's about 54,000 partials in Carroll County. Or when the T-SPLOST was deregionalized, I was at an ACCG meeting and actually saw that it was deregionalized, and I said, let's come back and compute the numbers. What we found out that if we passed the T-SPLOST in November, that is an equivalent of increasing the millage 3.5 mills. I don't think anybody in my position or anywhere else could increase it at 3.5 at one time with not getting your head chopped off. It's not a popular subject, but it does take money to keep the quality of life that we have in Carroll County and to provide the services we offer. I will say that Carroll County has not raised their millage rate in 10 years. We're going into year 11. That's something to be proud of, but an 8.34 millage rate does not always mean you're attracting the best businesses or anything else for Carroll County. So in some ways, it has a deficit point too. So this is why we were down to 2 choices at this point, and we wanted to put it to the voters to see where they were. We've been very fortunate. I think we've been very good stewards of our budget. I think we've been very good stewards of our regular SPLOST. This is not in to renew or take over our regular SPLOST, because we actually will keep it in place as well, we hope. But our goal is to implement this to increase our revenues, to take the pressure off the general fund. Approximately 40% of this revenue will come from people that do not live here, that we're not having to give a service to. That's pretty good. When they come into town, they spend money, and then they leave. We love visitors, but we will not have to provide major services for them. Will the T-SPLOST be added to all purchases? Not all purchases. As you see on the list, motor fuels, cars, trucks, off-road equipment, aviation for the airport, prescription drugs, there are some other farm exemptions, exempted food items, and vehicle purchases, to name a few of them. Where will the tax be collected? All cities and the county will participate if passed. Each city sets its own priority list to use their T-Splosh. We did not tell Villa Rica. We've been meeting and talking and seeing what their priority lists are. The revenue division is determined by an intergovernmental agreement between us all on how it will be divided. They basically do a 3-year look back to see what kind of money you've been spending on your transportation, and that's how they help calculate the formula. When is the T-Splosh vote? The vote will be held November 6, 2018. So the general election date is the same date as the governor's race. We hope that people will get out and vote. It's the time I'll plug that. Carroll County's in the primary, showed 19% voter. In the runoff, it was 15%, which is common to drop in the primary. But 19% is not a very strong voters rate, not statewide, nationwide, or anywhere else. I'd love to see the county in the 70s, 80s. The empathy is just gone. A lot of people don't vote. One, you make you feel like you're doing a good job because you're not getting all the complaints. But on the other hand, people just take it for granted that certain things are being done. As with other SPLOST votes, it will be up to the voters. It'll have to pass the majority for it to pass. Collections would not start until April of 2019. We were not going to look for any type of bonding or trying to pre-spend any type of money. We'll use it as it is collected. How's the T-SPLOST different from the other SPLOST? The T-SPLOST allows for certain operational costs that regular SPLOST won't allow. Currently, Carroll County spends $2.5 million out of its general fund just in our roads department. When I mentioned Charles Pope and all, we take 2.5 towards his budget. That will free up money to what's been one of our #1 problem, and that's public safety. Our sheriff came to me 6 years ago when I entered office and told me we were short-handed. 3.5 years later, we're almost at a critical point. I promised him at that point right there, it didn't matter if it meant raising taxes, a T-SPLOST, what we'd look at. But I promised him from my position and my board that we would not compromise or jeopardize the safety of the citizens in Carroll County. And that's not just talk. We are not going to jeopardize the men with their salaries and ladies with their salaries there, that we're not getting the coverage. And that's not just the sheriff, that's the fire department as well. Those are services that have been overlooked way too long. Moody's Analytical just came out with an article. It's the only second time in 2 decades where there are more jobs than people. We're all fighting over employees right now. I know city is fighting over some of the employees, same that we are. So it's going to become a bigger problem. But we have got to maintain current competitive pay for these personnel that are in the public safety line of business there. These funds could be reallocated. If we save that $2.5 million out of the county's budget, it will be reallocated to help meet the 4-year plan for the sheriff. We could have had him come and speak tonight as well. He's going on Rotary and everything else with me to talk how serious it is. I've tried to become just a training ground because we spend the money, we send them off to school, and within 2 years, another county picks them up, all because of the pay. And there's nothing wrong with the next age of youth that are coming in, because over 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every day. I'm headed in that direction. I was a baby boomer a year. I'm not near ready to retire. But the new youthful people that are coming in, they'll leave over $1. But if you're not competitive, they'll leave even quicker. And so we've got to be competitive with our pay. So T-SPLOST on public safety. Our goal, like I said, is to take care of public safety, EMA, and 911. Those are our baseline of government services that we want to take care of. It'll take $2.5 million out of our general fund, apply it to roads. Personnel is just getting us to where we're fully staffed. That's our other goal, is competitive pay and be fully staffed. In summary, T-SPLOST summary, the T-SPLOST will generate more money to improve road conditions. It'll make the county as a whole very, very much safer. It'll generate more money to be available to address transportation concerns in general. And finally, the T-SPOS allows the county to redirect its general fund and put money into a planned intergovernmental relation with our cities, our county, and give us some direction for the first time of telling us what we're going to do for our infrastructure. We've got some fact sheets here to hand out as you leave. We'll have that out there, but I'll open the floor at this point. That's our presentation. I'll tell you, my board wasn't just a consensus, it was 100%. We met with municipalities. We got all 7 municipalities on board. We could have done less than a penny, and none of them were, but all 7 municipalities are on there. Every municipality and mayor that I've met with have these same grand concerns. It's taking care of your infrastructure internally. And like I say, Tom has been very, very involved with Lehman, the financial numbers. Villa Rica was great to work with. I appreciate the relationship there from the mayor, and I promise you, Leslie has my phone number. She never hesitates to call me or email me at 10, 11 o'clock at night, and she'll laugh because I'll respond that late too sometimes.
You're not supposed to. You're just
Yeah,
supposed to see it
so
in the
she's a
morning.
hard worker as well there. But with that, we'll open up for any questions, Mayor, from the council or any citizens here, if that's how y'all do it as well. If you've got any questions, we got operations manager that can get in the weeds. We got the finance director can go over any type of number you need. If we don't know the answer, we will find it out for you. I'll open the floor.
Chairman Smith, I appreciate you being here. And one thing, that there may be questions that people think of later, so is there an email address or a website that they can go to and get some more answers to questions if they have them?
Chairman's office.
Yeah, we've got a main one for office. If you just pull up Carroll County Government, you can send them there, and they'll make it to the right branch. Yes, sir.
Is there anything on that handout like that? I was just curious. I've seen the handout, but I didn't recall.
Yeah, there is not, there will be something added. This is still a work in progress. The board approved Thursday night, approved putting on the ballot, and the election department approved Friday, put it on there. So we were all kind of rushing until we had all that, so now we're gonna have the stuff printed up and have a website dedicated to that. Hopefully have a link to Villa Rica and everything else for the questions we ask.
Lehman, you have any comments?
I
Come to the
did.
microphone.
I wanted to say,
apologize.
just like the county, we hope to be able to redirect about 2.5 million out of our general fund. Well, when they gave me Villa Rica's numbers, the way we came up with the allocations to divide with the cities this time was we actually looked at expenditures that you had been spending on your roads and transportation projects out of your general fund or out of your regular SPOS. And, you know, not, of course, to the degree the county spends out of the general fund, but I think Villa Rica will find some money in your general fund that you might be able to redirect by using T-SPOS money, and maybe from your regular SPOS projects that you could redirect by using the T-SPOS. I know I saw you back over the 3 years, y'all had done some capital outlays for equipment used for road work and that type of thing. So I just want to, you know, point out to Villa Rica that you also will be able to benefit. And, you know, you talked about funding for the Gold Nugget Trail, which I know you have a lot of transportation projects you want, but like if you had a matching grant, these funds could be used for that match. The bike trail is a legitimate use of T-SPOS dollars.
Gerald, do you have anything?
Now, if there's any questions, we'll be glad
Yeah,
to.
I'm going to stay here. My staff, some of them may go. I didn't talk to them because I was late arriving, but I'm going to stay here afterwards. Mayor, Council, we sincerely appreciate the opportunity to come to present. We're here through November to come back, hit any other groups you feel that we need to go represent. We'll be glad to go do that as stewards too.
2 questions. Number one, how much is a mill in the county?
2.4, 2.6, about $2.6 million,
Okay.
1 mil.
Was talking to some people the other day, how many deputies are on duty at any one given time? Day, night? You have any idea?
I'd hate to speak.
Chief Mansour may know that with us working with the sheriff. I know how they divide up in zones, but
I know there's 150, over 150 in total on the payroll.
But I will tell you, when he met me, we were able to solidify and take care of, of year 1 of his request. Year 2, we've been able to meet. This will allow us to get year 3 and 4 and then look from there. But I will tell you, his last comment was he was to the critical point. And that's not what I want to hear sitting in my position.
Any other questions?
I have
Chairman Smith, oh, I'm sorry.
just a tiny bit of context that I thought would be helpful for me if I were in your position. We have a 4% statewide sales tax, okay, statewide. We have lost, LOST, lost tax, local option sales tax. That's 1 penny, so that puts us at 5. We have eSplost, education SPLOST, that puts us at 6. We have regular SPLOST, I don't know anything else, regular county SPLOST, that puts us at 7. This would put us at 8% sales tax. And the reason I mention that is because I also had a concern like, well, where would it stop? So I checked with Senator Dugan, and y'all probably know, so I'm running this by you too, because I got this over the phone from him, because I said, oh my gosh, could we end up at 10% sales tax? No, we can't. Counties are limited to 3 pennies. Does that sound correct to you? Because that's what I got from Senator Dugan. To 3 pennies, that is the max. There's only one exemption in the state, and that is Atlanta. So DeKalb is at 8.9. I looked at some of the other cities. Somebody sent me a link. So if that helps you, understand the context, how far does this go when you add these pennies on? Where would it put us right now at a sales tax? I don't know if that helps you, but it helps me.
And I will say, and it's sort of odd, that you have to have the regular SPLOST to be able to do the T-SPLOST.
And I'll also,
I didn't know
Alabama
that.
is, if you go over to Anniston, Oxford, I'm not so sure if they're not at 10 because they work off a little different. But I'll also say, this helps Carroll County define our direction. As I mentioned earlier in my conversation, for 2 years, your former mayor and some of the council have fought hard with the governor's office to keep us out of the Atlanta Metropolitan Group, the ARC. That MPO, they're trying to drag in because of the density here in Villa Rica and the density in Temple, Georgia. If that comes, it will be your emissions control, your type of buses and things that we do not want in Carroll County. I love our neighbors in every adjoining county, but I think Douglasville stops where Douglasville is. I think Atlanta stops where Atlanta is. It's good to go visit, but we want to maintain and keep our quality of life in Carroll County where we are. I'll quit preaching to the choir.
Here. Thank you, Chairman Smith, for being here tonight and giving a great presentation, and thank you for all that you do for the city of Villa Rica and for Carroll County and your staff.
Thank y'all very much.
Thanks, Marty.
Okay, moving right along, let's see, what tab is that? My page is creased. Tab B, governing body, approval of minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, you have the minutes from the monthly meeting of July 5th, 2018, July 10th, 2018, and July the 11th, special call meeting. Do I hear a motion to amend or
I'll make the
approve?
motion, except that monthly is wrong. The call meetings of July 5th and July 11th, and this monthly council meeting July the 10th, I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor? Unanimous. Okay, item number 2, lease agreement with Gaston Outdoor Advertising.
Mayor, Council, we've worked on the lease renewal. David has prepared a revised document. Hopefully it's in your packet electronically there. We have recommended one change that David can talk about a minute, and then we've also removed the language about the term and the compensation, including anything about swapping the face of a sign. So it's strictly based on a monthly dollar amount, which we have pegged at, to begin with, at $550 per month, with adjustments for CPI annually going forward. So David, if you want to tell them a little bit about the other stipulation.
The other change related to a clause that was already in the agreement, which simply said that the city is the property owner. If we had an objection to any particular sign, that we could address Mr. Gaston and express our objection to any sign that he put on our property. And it just stopped at that. A question was raised to me, should we put some type of clause in there that would give a consequence if he did not honor our request? I have, Mr. Gassman has expressed to me that he's always been very solicitous of his customers and responsive to them if he thought that they would have an objection to a sign. But I did add a provision in that said that the council as a whole, not any individual person or individual staff, the city could express an objection to a sign that was placed on our property, and that he would address that, but if he did not address it within 60 days from being notified of it, that the lease agreement would terminate. People have raised questions to me as, isn't that fraught with potential problems? And I would acknowledge that it is. Objectionable signs mean different things to different people. My concern is somewhat made easier by the fact that you as a council have to act as a body to determine, to invoke that provision, and that there would be some circumstances that if there were objections raised, I would tell you that it's simply not permissible to object to it. But there are other situations. I mean, this is very close to a school. If you were if a sign were to be put up that advertised, something inappropriate to be near a school, that we would have the right to object to that.
Discussion.
We've been working on this for about a year, and this afternoon was the first time I saw that part about us being concerned about what would be the content on the sign and whether it's appropriate or not. I personally don't want us to get into deciding content. I imagine at the state level there's certain things you cannot put on signs that are lewd and lascivious or whatever. So a council could object if it advertised, a gun show or a political person or something else. I just hate to see us get down to where we can take, terminate the lease based on we object to what's on the sign. I don't know. It looks like a problem to me, and I don't like the fact that we've been talking about this for months and months and months, and this afternoon is when I found out that other little addition might get put in. It wasn't at the work session or anything else. It's very last minute. So,
I want to correct that. That phrase was always in the draft.
That was what I was
being
going
able
to say.
to object. There just weren't any consequences to it.
oh, I apologize then on that point.
That has been in there the entire time.
Okay, that we can take the lease. Okay.
Not that we could-
Well, not the consequence part, just the fact that the city could object to any objection. Look, the city owns that property, and if there were to be anything out there that turned out to be objectionable to the citizens of the city, without this provision, the council would be powerless to do anything about it. There needed to be something in there as a consequence. The language existed already.
So what do okay, how do
Language existed, but there was no consequence to it. You could
Okay.
raise your objection, and he could say, "Have a good day."
Okay, so how do we enforce an undefined, if we have not defined what's objectionable? It just seems legally messy to me. How do you enforce something that you're saying is objectionable if there's no definition of it?
Well, it has to be the council has to raise the objection, as the city attorney just said, and if that were to happen, then probably it's objectionable, would be my guess.
It would be, and you raise a good point, but to attempt to define what is objectionable is an impossible task.
That's why I hate to get into that mess. Okay, but that's it. I just had an issue with the way that worked.
Okay, if no more questions among ourselves. The applicant is present, and I would like to ask him to come up this time.
Alan Gaston, 403 Shady Valley Drive, Carrollton. On the objections on advertising. I've been in the business for 28 years and I've never had any ad ever objected by anybody, especially landowners. You want to make your landowners, you always want to keep them happy, because when you have a lease come up, then they can say, well, you wouldn't do that for me back then, now I'm going to get rid of your lease. But I've turned down many of different advertisers that wanted to advertise something that would probably be objectable. But I've even had a billboard across from Buster Miles Ford in Alabama, and I've had at least 5 different dealerships that want to advertise on that board. But I said no, that just wouldn't be right, to be right in Buster's face every time he would come out of the dealership. But on the also on the rate, I definitely appreciate the mayor and city council and city manager and Mr. Mecklin working on this lease for a very long time, and but I think the rate is a little bit too high, of $550 a month. The average of what I pay all my landowners on I-20 is $435. A rule of thumb is usually pay them 20% of what the income comes in to for the billboard, and that would be around $400 a month. The consumer price index, if I put the sign up in 2014 using the $550, today it would be $613 a month. It's hard to budget with a CPI. You just don't know what it's going to do. I'd rather work with some amount of, like, we have a 10-year lease. I'd rather work with like year 1 through 5, $475 a month, and then year 6 through 10, $500 a month. Something like that. That's just the comments that I have on it.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you, sir. Discussion? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I was just going to ask, just explain how you came up with the amount, how we know that's fair or whatever, because I know you're working on that. So how did we decide at the 550?
We looked at the revenue that we felt like had been generated potentially by the sign and just took a percentage of that, which is where the 550 came from. And then the CPI we felt like would just protect us going forward, as opposed to the current arrangement, which was just a fixed fee for the whole term. What the applicant's proposing is, if you just looked at those numbers, would be an average in between 475 and 500. So it work out to 480 something, almost 490 a year compared to the 550 that we recommended.
You mean a month?
A month, excuse me.
And Mr. Gasson did express to us here when we were talking about the face swap that those billboards are worth about $12.50 a month, and that would 20% of that is $500. I think that number probably was closer to 25%. But I think that makes sense to me.
I will entertain a motion.
I would move that we authorize the city manager to execute the attached lease agreement with Gaston Outdoor Advertising effective March 1, 2019.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? Unanimous. Okay, item number 3, discussion of times and dates of future council meetings.
All right, we talked about this in work session, and I've gotten no feedback on this, and the council person in question is not here, so I'd say that we're pushing this back to September.
I said on Thursday that I had made the motion last month and that I would discuss that with the other council members. I'm prepared to make the same motion again tonight. I would make the motion that we change our council meetings to 2 a month, occurring at 6 p.m. on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of each month, starting October. The second Tuesday in October 2018.
Second.
Have we gotten any feedback from Councilman Marchman?
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Have we gotten any feedback from her? She was gonna look into that.
I haven't. Have a motion and a second, further discussion? If not, all in favor? It is unanimous. Okay, tab C, Sarah? Financial update. Chairman Smith paid particular attention to the part of this that talks about medical insurance. May,
We smile at that section. We didn't used to, we almost cried every time.
The queen of PowerPoints.
Here comes the train.
QOPP.
That train's right on time.
This is old timer. He's not one of the guys that comes through the city that gets on that end and blows it all the way to that end.
that's a good train, that's a moving train.
Yes.
Stop train's not good, not so good.
Are we good? All right, this is our June financial update. This is the extended version as opposed to the abridged version you got on Thursday. Wanted to update you on cash. Again, this is as of June 30th. So if we look at where we were last year, we had almost $5.9 million in the bank. This is our operating cash. And now we have almost $8.6 million in the bank. So when we look at the next three accounts there, they are part of our pooled cash account. So we have one big checking account where we write most of our operating checks from. So when you see negatives, that doesn't mean we have a negative bank balance. That means we have basically those funds owe the other funds cash, but that's all kept track in our accounting software. So our general fund has grown slightly from this point last year, 5.1 to $5.5 million. Our water sewer fund, this is where we've seen significant growth. At this point last year, we had a negative $488,000. At this point now, we have a positive $1.5 million. So at the end of 2017, we did a transfer from SPLOST to help with our debt reduction. That was $644,000. That helped swing us into the positive. And we've also cut back. We didn't do as much spending on capital last year and going into the beginning of this year. That's helped. But obviously our rate increases that went into effect at the beginning of this year, actually February 1, that has also helped tremendously. Our sanitation solid waste is still negative, but at the end of our 2017 audit, we did write off $384,000 that we knew we were not going to recoup. Those are losses that have built up over the past, I think, almost a decade. So that's why we've seen a significant reduction there, because we are still losing money in that solid waste fund. But again, after this next budget, we hope to right that ship. The next three I just wanted to highlight are SPLOST accounts. We have 3 SPLOST accounts. We still have some money in our 2008 Carroll County SPLOST. We have $537,000 in the bank. Our 2015 Carroll County SPLOST, we only have $280,000 in the bank, but we're at the point right now where we are waiting for the county to pay off their debt so we can get our big check, I think, in January or February. And then in our 2016 Douglas County SPLOST, we have $201,000 sitting in the bank as of June. Any questions on cash?
It's probably gonna come to somebody's mind if we got $1.5 million in the black, in our account for the sewer fund. Why do we need to raise rates?
So that is a good question, but again, we're trying to prepare for 2020 when our bond payment increases by almost $500,000. So yes, we did make some significant improvement in this last year, but again, we're trying to get ourselves ready for the 2020 bond payment increase.
Which is how much?
Right now it's 1.7 million, so when we go up $500,000, it'll be 2.2 million.
At this point still, it's not paying for itself. Did we not put SPLOST funds in there or something else? Haven't we still contributed to that fund out of our?
Not in 2018, but in 2017 we did. At the end of the year, we put $644,000 from SPLOST into that. So that's part of the reason that number looks so good. Additionally, in our 2018 budget, even though it's a short year, we have budgeted a $700,000 loss for water sewer this year because we didn't want to put the supplement in from SPLOST or general fund.
And that's it, because I was thinking people might look at that and what Danny said, think, oh, well, it's all fine now. And it's not. It's still not self-sustaining.
It's
Yeah.
still not self-sustaining. We have the bond payment to get ready for, but also we are not spending the money on capital improvements like we're wanting to. So we're also trying to get ourselves cash ready to do those kind of projects in-house as well.
Yeah, I knew that was the answer, but I thought the people needed to know that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, next slide. Oh, I have it. Sorry, Elisa. All right, this shows our growth. This is new construction permits, residential and commercial. You can see the big difference from 2017 to 2018. In 2017, we had 41 building permits by the end of June, and we're already over 100 so far in 2018. Water taps, sewer taps, they're kind of following suit. And in commercial, we're still not showing any new, although I think we have one maybe this month. Oh, we'll find out next month. Okay. This is just a snapshot of our business activity that we were just speaking about, water and sewer fund. So at this first 6 months of the year last year, we had a loss of $580,000. This year, we have increased our tap fees, as we just saw on the last slide, but also our rate increases went into effect as of February. That was 7% water increases and 35% sewer increases. So you can see, if you look at the top, the water revenue and the sewer revenue year to year, you can see the increases, particularly in sewer. So but our expenses have also increased. That's the debt has increased because we're looking at a 9-month year as opposed to a 12-month year. That's part of it. Depreciation slightly increased, but so we're still showing a loss, but nearly half of what it was last year. Here we go. Sanitation, solid waste. So looking year to year, we still have loss in that, which for that loss to be where it is, we've lost $50,000 so far in the first 6 months of the year, even with the rate increases. We know we still have significant improvements to do in this fund, which we, again, will address in the 2019 budget. But I think this looks pretty good considering we added additional personnel. We realigned the personnel the way they should be. And we've also increased tipping fees significantly, almost 50%. Was it 50 or 100? 100%?
Yeah, like doubled, didn't it? Almost doubled?
Yes, it doubled. And then our sanitation went up by CPI this summer, so.
So just for clarification, there were 2 employees that were working for the city, but they were being counted in another department when they were really working in this department. So now they've gotten in there, and it's showing that we're paying for them in that department.
That's correct.
And tipping fees, which is where we go to dump all the junk that gets picked up, right? They've doubled the charges for us to do that. And there was what was the other item?
Our sanitation, so per cart, our cost with Waste Industries has gone up by CPI, which is Consumer Price Index.
Right.
And that was about 3%.
And next month, I thought we were going to get it this month, but next month, we're going to hear some options on how to work on this from Bobby, right?
Yes.
Great. Can't wait. I've got a constituent that's waiting for me to call him with that.
Okay. All right, just wanted to show some other highlights. This is from the general fund. Our sales tax revenue is up from last year. Last year we had $1.1 million. Now we're looking at $1.3 million just in the first 6 months of the year. So that's good. Our hotel, motel tax revenue is up significantly. Again, we hired a consultant to help us audit these hotels in our city. So they've been auditing and collecting for us, and you can see it's grown from $72,000 to $130,000 in just the first 6 months. Water purchases, this is a savings. Wanted to point out that we were at this point last year we had bought $263,000 in water, and we've been able to cut that back significantly to $133,000. So great job, Pete and his staff, for the savings there.
And the rain.
In the rain. We have had a lot of rain. Total number of employees, this is just for your information. We had 137 employees at June last year. This does not count our seasonal summer camp employees. This year we have 152. So between filling positions that have been vacant, but also adding positions like our IT, our city engineer, inspectors and things, we have increased our number of employees. Okay, this is our self-funded insurance fund. We've been on the plan now for 9 months, since October 1st, 2017. This is the comparison of the checks that we were actually writing to United Healthcare, who was our health insurance company, compared to now, where every month I take, well, every payroll actually, we take the amount of contributions from the city and the contributions from the employees, and we put that in a bank account. That's our bank account, not their bank account. And that sits there until we pay the monthly administrative fees to our third-party administrator, and also the claims from the actual doctor's appointments and prescriptions. So in 9 months, we have saved, just in that difference between what we've paid out to them versus what we have in our bank account, $285,000.
So you get that, Chairman? We have saved $285,912 through being self-funded on our insurance.
Okay. And this came up I think last week after the audit, asking about the reserves of the city. So I wanted to bring updated numbers now that our audit is complete. So down at the bottom, you can see the actual numbers. So I gave 5 years worth, 2013 to 2017. At citywide, our citywide reserves, this is unrestricted reserves. We have more reserves than this, but this is the unrestricted portion. We had $7.4 million in our citywide reserves, and at the end of our last audit, which was 12/31/2017, we had $9.2 million. And then I've broken down general, water, sewer, sanitation, and solid waste. So if you look at general, it has decreased some since that 2013 mark, but the yellow boxes up above. Oh, and I had copies for y'all here. The boxes in yellow kind of point out why we had some of the changes in the general fund. So it dipped from 2015 to 2016. That year we separated out, we had allowed for 2 revolving loans to the DDA and the Development Authority at $250,000 each. So I had to take that out of the unrestricted reserve and then account for it as a restricted number now. So that money is still attributed to the city, but it's reserved for something else. And then $450,000 for the promissory note that was supposed to be for the Welcome Center. So that has been, again, reserved. It's still in our bank account at this point, but it is now set aside, or it's not in this unrestricted number. So that's why you see the dip from 2015 to 2016 in the general fund. And then also, we had another dip from 2016 to 2017, which was our last audit. But I wanted to point out, we wrote off $384,000 as a loss to the sanitation solid waste fund. So that hit our general fund. Basically, we had to transfer that amount of money to the solid waste fund to cover the losses that had built up over the years that we were not going to recover. And then I've made a note down at the bottom, the general fund will take another hit for this short year ending September 30th. We knew that going in because this is the main reason we wanted to switch years, was because the fourth quarter is when we get over 40% of our general fund revenue. So we had to balance our budget this year, and we tightened down on expenditures as much as we could, but we knew we were still going to take a hit on our general fund balance. But that green box in the top left, just wanted to point out, the highest point, I looked back the past 10 years, our citywide reserves, the highest we had been in the past 10 years was $9.3 million. That was at the end of our fiscal year, March 31st, 2012. That was 6 years ago. And as of our last audit, this one I'm showing you now, we were at $9.26 million. So we are pretty much right on target with our highest point for the past 10 years. So thought I wanted to point that out. Any questions on this?
Great job, Sarah. Thank you for that presentation. Very thorough as usual.
Thank you.
Item number 2.
Okay, just wanted to have discussion on our millage rate calculation. At least I haven't updated one on my jump drive. Do the cover sheet, if you will. Well, that one's fine. That's fine. That's fine. If we can see it. The next one is the cover sheet, yeah. Uh-huh. All right. So since we are in 2 counties, we have to combine the Carroll County Tax Digest and the Douglas County Tax Digest. Carroll County had a decrease of 3% in our Tax Digest. Douglas County had an increase of 16%. Our current millage is 6.365. And when we do the calculations, the proposed rollback rate is 6.056. So this would be a decrease of actual taxes levied of $33,600, which is a decrease of 1%. So our proposed taxes is $3.5 million. So the 2019 budget that I'll be presenting next does include the numbers based on the rollback tax rate. And we plan to have a public hearing on August 14th, which is a week from today. And then we're hoping to adopt it August 30th.
Any questions?
Just that, okay, so we would take in, we'd have a decrease of 33,000 that we would take in, I'm rounding it off there, a little
Yeah.
closer to 34, in property tax.
Correct.
But we had a good increase in sales tax, hotel, motel, some of those. How is it, Tom, would you explain for the sake of everybody, how it is that we can keep the millage rate, actually back it off, and yet still allow for growth? New building, new homes, that sort of thing. Because if you kept, the mindset is if you keep rolling back to your taxes, how could you possibly pay for the additional growth in the city? Would you pontificate on that briefly?
So, property tax is only provides a fraction of our general fund revenue. So let's say it's a third or 40% or whatever it is. So if we continue to do rollbacks, then the only additional revenue that we're going to see on the property tax side is from organic growth. So new houses, new businesses, net of exemptions and all that other stuff that goes on. So the way that we would improve our revenues would be all the other components, which would be primarily the things that we just talked about tonight. So sales tax, regular lost, franchise fees, and then where the economy is helping us is building permits, which basically went to zero. So those 100 homes that we've permitted all generated fees. And then everything else is sort of ancillary to that. It's not, the other stuff just all adds up to something, but it's not really growing at a significant rate. So that's really where our change is going to come from. Right now, we're not seeing significant commercial growth. Our growth is just starting to occur in residential. So the things that we know that are on the horizon are only residential and one big commercial expansion. So those are the only two things that I'm really sure of that we see coming up in 19 is the Sugar Foods expansion, and then residential, which we're hoping will grow up to somewhere around 200 houses a year, and that we'll be able to maintain that for several years as the economy's healthy.
So really what you're saying is we need another industrial park.
That's one of the things that we're talking about, both with, the folks in the county that are helping us, our own folks, while we're working on the comp plan, we're looking for another place for that to happen. But yeah, in order for us to grow on the manufacturing side, which is primarily, what sort of our claim to fame is food processing, in order for that to happen, we need some additional sites for sure.
Okay.
Any other questions on the millage rate? Okay. Item number 3, 2019 budget.
That time again. I mentioned this on Thursday, but if you're keeping track, we're almost actually done with our 2018 fiscal year. We have less than 2 months left. So we are trying to get our 2019 budget done because we'll be starting October 1st with our new fiscal year. All right. So the question is, where are we going? We talked about this last year when we presented the 2018 budget. Our goal is financial health by 2020. As we mentioned the other day, part of this is getting ready for the big bond payment increase. Also, as Tom mentioned, we're expecting growth. We're already seeing growth. So trying to get ourselves ready or in that place, we gave ourselves kind of a 3-year, I don't want to say plan, but this is year 2 basically. So our first year, as I already mentioned, we got rate increases that went into effect in February of this year. So we're going to have more rate increases. We'll talk about that in a minute. So this is year 2, working towards financial health by the year 2020. Wanted to refresh everyone with the buckets. So in governmental accounting, we have to account for things separately. Basically, some of the money we get in is sourced for certain things versus other money that's sourced for other things. So for instance, our general fund budget, which is healthy for the city of Villa Rica, that is money provided by sales tax, franchise fees, business permits, those kinds of things. So those are taxes that are used for government type purposes: police, recreation, general administration, public works, streets, those types of things. Now water and sewer, I need to account for those separately because those are user fees that will support the expenses that go along with water and sewer. Same for sanitation, solid waste. So let's look at how our buckets line up. So again, our general fund is healthy. What's made it unhealthy over the years, or potentially unhealthy, is the drain that it gets from the other buckets when it's providing water to our water, sewer, sanitation, solid waste buckets. Our water bucket, if we look at that as a whole, so these are the user fees that come from our water department and the expenses that correlate with that. We were losing money slightly, but not as bad as some of the others. So that's why you only see a little bit of a drain there. Our sewer fund, though, that's where we have our big bond payments and that we were not covering with our sewer user fees. So the sewer bucket was unhealthy, and we're talking large dollars. Sanitation, we were not passing on the CPI increases every year to our customers, so we were taking a hit there. But again, we're not talking huge dollars there. Solid waste, however, this is our pickup to the citizens for anything besides garbage, household garbage. And what we calculated last year was that it cost us, we should be charging the same that we're getting charged for waste industries, because we're running routes, actually more routes than they're running. But we were not passing that cost on to the consumers. So that's why that fund had negative cash, negative reserves. We had to write off $384,000. So it is unhealthy, that bucket is. I didn't show it spewing out because we're not talking as huge of dollars as the sewer fund. Okay, so let's talk 2019. Some of the major changes for this budget. First one being the reorganization of various departments. First one was adding the creation of a utility director position. So this position would oversee our water plant, wastewater plants, both of them, and our distribution collection department. Next, our city engineer would become the public works director, as our current public works director would become the utility director. So our city engineer would oversee the streets, solid waste, stormwater, and the deputy public works director would oversee all maintenance. So this is fleet and building, as well as grounds and custodians. And the last change listed there is moving Pine Mountain under economic development with tourism. And this is just a chart of that. The yellow items are the ones that changed. So you can see the separation of public works and the utilities director. Okay. Let's talk enterprise funds. We've kind of already mentioned it, but again, we're trying to get away from the general fund having to supplement our water, sewer, sanitation, solid waste buckets. They should be self-sufficient. And we've taken a big stride in that this year. We're seeing that with our cash is improving, our reserve is improving for the water sewer fund, but still, we're trying to get ready for that 2020 bond payment increase. So again, we're trying not to transfer from general fund. This will be the second year that we have not transferred to the water sewer fund, but this will be the first year we will not transfer to the sanitation solid waste fund. And we talked about this last year, but just to kind of keep everybody, giving everybody an idea of what it would cost, if we wanted to pay the bond payment from the general fund, which the general fund used to contribute at least half of that, that would require a $3 million increase on our tax rate. So as the chairman said, that would not be popular to raise our millage rate three mills. So we're trying to avoid that.
A mill for the city of Villa Rica is how much?
$580,000. Okay. So in our 2019 budget, we have proposed a 5% water rate increase and a 30% sewer rate increase. Again, heavier on the sewer because that's where the bond payment is. We're trying to have the sewer users pay for the sewer bond payment. We do have customers that are water only, and we don't want them supplementing the bond payment because they don't get any benefit from that sewer plant. So that's why we're trying to put it on the users who are actually getting the benefit. Again, this is necessary before the bond payment increase. This is only on the volumetric part of the rate. So when we bill our customers, we have a base for water and a base for sewer, and that is for every customer. That is basically what it costs for us for the customer to even attach to our system, to be attached to our system. Then we have the volumetrics piece, which is dependent on how much you use. So that's variable. That is the part where we plan to make the rate increase on. So this is where the user has some ability to control that. If you're a higher user, you're going to feel the increase more than a smaller user.
So last year, the first year of this was a base rate increase.
We did volumetric this year as well. So we've been able to avoid the base rate change. Sanitation, solid waste, we are not proposing any change to the solid waste fee. That's currently at $7.50, but what we will be bringing to you next month, or Bobby will be bringing, are the proposed changes to basically putting limits on what we will pick up for that $7.50. If the customer is needing additional things, larger or different types, I'll have to let Bobby talk about that next month, that would require an additional fee. Because it costs us every time we take, a mattress or different things, it costs us more to drop different things. Sanitation, we are proposing a $2 monthly rate increase. Again, this is necessary to break even in this enterprise fund. So this is a depiction of what the total rate increase would look like to our average residential customer. So this, with the 5% water increase, the 30% sewer increase, and the $2 sanitation increase, this is the $12.16 increase per month.
That's based on 4,500 gallons.
Correct. So someone who uses less water would see a smaller increase.
It's 4,500 gallons on average
Yes.
for the city.
And this is someone who has a senior discount. They would see an $8.14 increase per month. So that's shown on the someone who uses 3,000 gallons per month. Okay. Let's talk numbers. So our total city budget is $29.6 million proposed for 2019. Majority of that is general fund. I think the general fund is about $13 million. And then we have water, sewer. We have various SPLOST projects, or SPLOST funds in here, excuse me. We have our self-funded hotel fund. Almost $30 million with our total city budget.
And obviously, we don't have T-SPLOST in there because it's not part of it. It hasn't been approved.
Correct. Okay, this is our general fund, $13.3 million for our general fund. So of that, taxes is almost $10 million. So again, that's why I was saying this accounts for our taxes that pay for our governmental services. We do get some money from licenses and permits. We get a little bit from intergovernmental. So charges for service, that includes your recreation, some of the services that are provided by community development. We do have fines and forfeitures budgeted there at $547,000. Okay. Transfers in, $1.3 million. This is a combination of our enterprise funds contributing towards the general fund expenses that basically internal services to the enterprise funds. So if these were standalone utilities, you would expect that they would have basically like a administrator, a finance department, HR, IT, legal. So we have our enterprise funds contribute back towards those expenses. And then at the bottom you see kind of a breakdown of the different departments. Public safety, $4.6 million. Public Works, $1.9 million, and Parks and Recreation, $2 million. Those are our big ones. All right. our enterprise funds. So again, this includes 5% water rate increases, 30% sewer increases, and $2 on sanitation. But you can see that we are not budgeting any losses this year on either of those funds. And the little chart on the left shows you, that's in millions, how much revenue we are expecting from each of those services. Okay, our budget for capital is $3.5 million this year. It's mostly funded through SPLOST, Carroll County and Douglas County. However, this year we're actually funding some through our general fund budget. I think that's a first in a couple years. And then some from our water sewer budget. So we have presented capital and personnel changes to the council multiple times up to now. And so I just wanted to share some of the changes that we've seen since then. I think that was July 10th or 11th that we last met. So since then, we've added the gold miner statue for $21,000, the gold nugget tower for $75,000, the concession stand and restroom at Gold Dust for $150,000, converting the light poles at the tennis courts for $18,000, the Gold Dust parking lot and moving the light poles for almost $169,000, a John Deere bunker and field rake for $13,000, an F-250 for Public Works for $34,000, a maintenance truck for grounds maintenance at $18,000, truck for an additional meter technician, $26,000, and an additional grapple truck for $160,000. We also removed a few things. The Mirror Lake connector, we delayed that a year. Side arm mower tractor, that we delayed that another year. And meter replacements, when we last spoke, we basically delayed the personnel for 6 months, so then I took out half of the actual meter replacement money.
So they'll be starting mid-year.
Correct.
And they'll only need half the number of meters.
Yes.
I guess, okay.
In theory.
And we can go over this in the budget meeting that we're gonna have, but I do have a question about the Gold Nugget Tower. I'm like, 75,000, goodness gracious, what's that thing cost? Is that a whole new tower, or is it that bad off? Okay, I'll wanna know more about that, but we don't have to do it tonight. The gold miner statue, people are gonna have to understand that, what happened in that situation, so we don't end up doing that again, hopefully.
Personnel. So in our total city budget, we have $9.7 million in personnel. Of that, 7.3 is salaries and 2.3 is benefits. This includes, for 2019, 9 new FTEs, excuse me. That means full-time equivalents. So that's 8 full-time and 2 part-time. That adds up to 9 full-time people. This includes 4 title changes. And we also received the numbers back from our compensation classification study. Basically, so we talked about this on Thursday, but over the past couple months, we had hired a firm, Evergreen Consulting, that came in. They interviewed, they had every employee fill out a job assessment tool, which looked at their actual duties, what they're actually doing every day, the supervisory responsibilities they have, the risk that they have, whether that's manual labor or decision making, looked at all that to see where they should be ranked basically in the pay grade. They went out to, I'm not sure the number, they went out to a bunch of our peers, people that we're competing for, employees, people that are nearby, looked at how we compared pay-wise on that, and then they came back to us with recommendations on who needed to be paid, who needed pay increases to be market competitive. So they gave us a range of implementation strategies, basically. On the lower level was bringing people up to their minimum of the new pay grade, the new proposed pay grade, and the top end was over $800,000. That was bringing people, so basically where they are in their pay grade now. So if they're at 60% of their current pay grade, putting them at 60% of their new pay grade. That was the highest implementation plan that they gave us. We went a tier down, basically brought people up to where they should be, but capped at the midpoint of their pay grade. So no one went beyond the midpoint of their new pay grade.
Just 2 things real quick. explain to people, did the city of Villa Rica hire 9 new people?
So these are the 9 proposed new ones. So they have not been hired yet.
Okay, is it the plan of the city of Villa Rica to hire 9 new employees?
It's actually 10. It's 8 full-time and 2 part-time.
Okay.
Delayed.
Yes. Most of them are delayed. I think all but 2 are delayed.
Did you tell us that a few of them were, I thought there were a few that were unfilled positions? Because we've had times during the year where we've lost a police officer and we haven't had or 2, and we haven't had the replacement, so
These are actual new requested positions.
all new?
Yes.
Okay. And when do we get that report on that pay study?
Like I said, they gave us the numbers we needed to do the budget, but I think they have a more comprehensive report that'll be coming to us at a later date. We don't know yet.
Is that the end of August?
Hopefully. All right. Again, we talked with the council multiple times in detail about what those new positions were. So since then, the changes we've had, we removed the purchasing agent, and we removed the school resource officer for Douglas County, and the related promotion to sergeant for our SRO corporal, the school resource corporal. Now, since Thursday, we've had a few changes to our 2019 budget.
Hang on, can we stop just a minute? I think we have new information.
Well, that's what she's about
Got
to
it.
get to.
Okay, you're
It's on the next slide.
Okay.
Yes. So yes, we heard that Douglas County was willing to fund half of a Douglas County school resource officer. So these are some changes that have come up since that haven't necessarily changed the numbers for, but we could. So with that being said, if they're covering half of it, the cost to us would be $26,797. With that additional SRO being added, we wanted to add back that promotion for the corporal to a sergeant for the SROs. So that's another $6,600 to our budget. Also looking at adding an assistant to the city manager, but then delaying it for half of a year. So that's roughly $26,000. And then also adding a traffic study, which rough estimate, we put in $100,000. So we're looking at changes of $160,000 potentially. So some options that we could use to offset that from what we have in the budget already is possibly delaying the implementation of the compensation classification study. So if we were to delay it for 2 months, that would free up $103,000 in our budget, in the 2019 budget, the way it's presented. Basically, instead of having those increases go into effect October 1st, if we delayed it to December 1st, that would free up some money there. We also have, in this year's budget, because a lot of times we come to y'all needing to hire consultants for various things, in this year's budget, we've tried to allow for some contingency money, whether that's in the council's budget, the city manager's budget, some of the other department heads' budgets for these type of professional services. So I was looking at how much we have in there. We have $150,000. And then another option is to look at possibly budgeting for dark time and personnel.
Explain, dark time?
So
We gotta turn the lights off or what?
we know that we're not always 100% staffed. So if I budget 100% of a salary
Gotcha.
and that position sits vacant for 3 or 4 months, we call that dark time. So that's money that's budgeted, but that's not actually being used.
Okay.
So if we need to consider that in our budget, we could do that. So anyway, those are some options that we could use if we wanted, if the council desires to put those 4 items back in the budget or in the budget to start with, then we have some options. All right.
I do want to mention that as late as today, our city manager said, I don't need an assistant. But I think we all have agreed as elected officials that our city manager is way, way, way overtaxed right now. And some of the things, I think he could use that. So with all due respect, sir, we disagree.
All right. What's next in our budget process?
So take that.
We have, this Thursday, we have a town hall at City Hall.
Let me just back up just for a second.
Yes.
And this won't take but a minute. But on the options for offset, I personally would like you to come to us with some recommendation for how you would like to do that, or you and Tom, even if it's a combination of one or more of these items when we meet again for this. All right, go ahead with the schedule.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, and I want you to think about a concept. So what we have asked Evergreen to do is an evaluation of task. It is not an evaluation of performance. So one thing that we could do would be to immediately implement the bottom tier, which would take everybody to minimum, and then tie any additional money that they recommended, which would potentially take people to the midpoint, to the next round of evaluations. Because otherwise what we're doing is we're gonna treat everyone's performance the same, which is not the case. Does that make sense? So we need, and I'd like to talk about that in detail as we get closer to the decision. But we've got a couple of weeks, so if you
I would
that around, so that may save us some.
As part of that discussion, and Leslie brought it up, and I brought it up pretty much every time you've brought up this salary study, we want to see that. So as soon as that's available, but I was going to discuss that very thing, because you talked about how you had worked those numbers, but what he's talking about I think makes sense. So I hope there's more discussion about that before we do that, and if that is part of the strategy to offset, I think that's a good idea as well.
Okay.
Is it really $100,000 for a traffic study? That sounds like a huge amount of money.
I think it's a
Where'd
huge
that
task.
$100,000 come from?
Bobby's experience.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get a ballpark price for budget, and talked to two guys today, and they say it may be less than that, but they wouldn't recommend putting less than that into our budget.
And I'll be honest with you, that's one that I have specifically asked for on numerous occasions, and I think it's important for the future growth of the city, because we need to, we already know, everybody that drives in Villa Rica knows we have traffic problems. But the last thing in the world that we need to do is to bring in more development, more houses, more commercial, without some kind of plan in place to say when somebody comes to the intersection of X and X, this is the improvements that they need to fund, or that needs to be a part of their discussion when they come to the city and ask for approval. Because every time we bring in a new development, a new housing project, new commercial, it does affect the streets that are already overburdened. And so I think it's money well spent looking forward. Again, we are, in the past, we have not done so good in planning for the future. So this is a tool that will help us to know where our existing problems are, but not only that, more importantly, where we need to address problems when future development comes our way.
If you would also consider what Chairman Smith presented tonight, we'll know in November if T-Splosh passes. If it does, in our case, we could potentially collect 5 months of revenue unbudgeted this year. So we'll know in November if that money is coming or not. And if it doesn't, then maybe we look at this traffic study differently if we know there's no revenue.
I would agree with that.
But if we get a positive result in the referendum and we've got the money in the budget, then maybe we could get ahead of that stream of revenue and do a study and more specifically focus where that money's going to be spent.
I would agree with that.
Well, I imagine during the last boom that Villa Rica pretty much got caught off by surprise with how quick everything exploded with the housing boom and then the crash. But what I don't want to end up, and this is why I really want us to do the traffic study. As I drive here, as I drive in towns nearby here, as I go to other states and drive in city, I can't have fun anymore. Now I'm like looking, gee, wonder how much that cost. And I watch just traffic flows, all kinds of crazy things now, to try to figure out, gee, how could we do that? And I'm not an engineer, but I can look at little things like over where Chick-fil-A is, and the gas station there, and racetrack, and how you can get off the road and access 10 places without having to get back on the main road. Okay, I don't understand that technically like an engineer would, but I go, that's a good thing. Then I get off the road at 20 at 5 in Douglasville, and I go, whatever it is, let's not do this. But I don't know how to do that. That's where I see the traffic study coming in to help us, so we don't end up, I mean, we got a few, but our problems are small compared to a lot of things, right? That's where I see the traffic study really coming into play. So we don't end up with intersections all like that, and we can figure out how to plan for the future and not get caught off guard.
Okay. All right, what's next in the budget process? So Thursday night, we're having a town hall at City Hall, 6 p.m. Next Tuesday, a week from tonight, we'll have a I think it's in the afternoon, 3 p.m., we'll have a workshop and a public hearing here. And then at our next work session, which is August 30th, another public hearing on the budget. And then hopefully adoption of the 2019 budget on our September meeting, September 4th.
Questions? Sarah, once again, I commend you and staff, everybody that put this is an outstanding presentation, and Chairman Smith's shaking his head yes back there, and I think Lehman probably is too. But I love the way you've encapsulated everything in a smaller presentation. It's a lot easier to look at, and ultimately, hopefully, it's easier for the public to look at and understand. So thank you to everybody that had something to do with that, and thank you for what you're doing. Okay. City Manager's report.
All right, we're going to do a brief one tonight. One thing that I have been wanting to keep you abreast of is the change at GDOT. So you know that Sam Welborn retired. Also, the district engineer has retired, Dwayne Comer. Lynn Westmoreland is now Sam's replacement. I think he lives in Grantville. If you know Lynn, he was a member of the House. And the new district engineer is Grant Waldrop, who lives in Temple, a neighbor, somebody that we have a really good relationship with. He was the district traffic engineer before becoming the district engineer. So those are both positive developments for us, I think. You know about the water treatment plant. Carter Sloop's working on the design. The lift station analysis that Brennan and Goforth Williamson is working on is underway. We're hoping to bring you in the September meeting numbers from the lift station analysis, but for instance, one of the things that Brennan has identified is an opportunity to decommission 5 lift stations with the construction of 1 new lift station. So that's the kind of thing we're going to talk about. Not going to be simple, you know, but that's what's coming. So we're going to get some value out of that. We spent a bunch of money to do that, but we're going to get value out of that. Elio is working on the design of the improvements on Liberty Pool. We're hoping to have construction documents ready for bid in 2 months. And then we'll put that out to bid, and then we'll go to construction. So in 19, we're hoping to have resolved that problem. We're getting ready to do to bring you a recommendation on the inflow and infiltration project. We had 2 bidders, 2 really good bidders. We're doing interviews on August the 15th, so that will be on the September agenda. C.W. Matthews, through their subcontractor, has finished the striping on this year's road work, so that is a 100% complete project.
And a great job.
And we put our money where our mouth is. We fixed some roads. We picked a good contractor. That turned out really well. The staff had a great relationship with them. I think we have a chance to be on their radar if we keep doing that March kind of work where they're sort of not quite in their season yet, and we give them something, around $1 million project to work with. I think we can continue to do that. Let's see. Jim is making great progress on the IT side. We have all the server equipment installed in the facility in Bremen, and he is now trying to navigate his way through changing out our email server, which is really a twisting his tail, I think. So he's migrated a lot of the email off, and now he's going through some of the other processes that machine was responsible for, trying to get that moved over. Two disappointing things that I'll finish with. One is we're still not having luck finding a full-time code enforcement person, so that one's still out there. If you know anybody, you need to be sending them our way. And secondly, the August 18th event that Keep Carroll Beautiful had scheduled, which I think was hazardous waste this time, has been postponed, and I do not have a rescheduled date. And if you remember, we were scheduling our cleanup week
Right.
to follow all of that, which I think was like the end of September. Is Charlie? 24. Okay, the last week of September. So we'll see if that changes our plans. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. So I'll bring that to you as soon as I have it.
Any questions? Thank you, sir. Okay, do we have executive session?
I don't have any reason to ask for it.
Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn?
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor? We are adjourned.
It'll be interesting to see how the two